Hello, hello, guys. Hi, it's John. Nice to see you guys. It's been a while. All right, before we begin our talk, as always, we have announcements. Oh, actually, just one announcement. This week we have, next week we'll have pizza with Father Farrell, as always. It'll be every Wednesday after the noon mass. Don't forget to sign up. The link will be down below. And then, other than that, let's just get into our intro. Chris and Leslie met through the GMU Baptist Student Union and quickly joined each other in a lifelong pursuit of knowing and loving God. Chris, a mostly native Virginian, is a revert to Catholicism, and Leslie, from Texas, is a convert to the Catholic faith. Their talk is a collection of thoughts on how to love your spouse and your children, and, basically just things that they wish they knew before they got married and had kids. Other than that, Chris and Leslie.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi there.
I'm Chris, and this is Leslie. So, as was mentioned, this is kind of a collection of thoughts that's based on our own personal experiences of things that worked and things that didn't work. And we got some notes here, so we'll keep looking down at them. But by worked, we mean things that helped our spouse and our kids feel loved. And by didn't work, we mean things that caused rupture or division or hurt in our marriage or with our kids. And in some cases, still being worked through and healed. So who are we? Well, I'm Chris. I grew up a nominal Catholic, failed out of college, joined the Coast Guard, got saved in a Protestant Bible study, went back to school at George Mason after 5 years in the Coast Guard. And then Leslie grew up Protestant. She loved God from an early age, about 6 years old, went to Oral Roberts University for 3.5 years and then transferred to George Mason. And that's where we met in the spring semester of 1989 in the CAF of...
Sure. So we met in the cafeteria there in the Sub 1 building.
Which that's actually, I don't even know if it's still
Is
there.
it even there? Right, but things moved really quickly with us. We hung out with the Baptist Student Union. And so we met on February 21st through the Baptist Student Union. We hung out with them as a group, dear friends, but eventually just kind of actually quickly began to major in each other. So we would go out as just friends, but we started officially dating exclusively on April 18th, and we got engaged on May 7th. And married on September 23rd. And remember, we were Protestants, so we didn't have the 6-month prep.
Yeah.
They kept saying, "Oh, you're fine."
Anyway, so we have 5 kids and 6 grandkids. Abby, who's 30, she has 4 kids. Asaph, 27. Amy, 25, with 2 kids. Peter, who's 22, and Katie, who is 20. We entered the Catholic Church 17 years ago. Is that right? Okay. In March of 2006.
So Nicole and I were talking after Mass one day in Leesburg, and she broached the subject of our speaking to you guys, and it was really an honor and very humbling to be asked to speak on the topic of imitating the Holy Family. Mm-hmm. And of course, we gave it a lot of thought because that's a big thing to think about. And I was thinking that what is the Holy Family but a communion of love? So here's where we are in our pursuit of love. We still love each other. We are each other's best friend and confidant still. We love spending time together, and we still desire each other.
Those are all pretty important after 31 years.
Right, we've been married 31 years.
So our kids all have their own relationship with God. They all want to please God. They're pretty balanced. They still like each other. And, when you have kids, you don't realize how important that is until you have your own kids. And in some cases, they like each other better now than when they were younger. And they still like to connect with us, but they do so in their own way.
Yeah, we really try to respect their boundaries. Yeah. So there were these are the things you would...
Okay, yeah. So just some right up front. Our children turned out really well, both because of us and in spite of us. So that's kind of a note. We'll talk about this more later, but we entered marriage. We were very idealistic. We loved God. but we had a lot of ideals, and
Right. Yeah, and something that we did took us a little while to recognize. Um, you enter into a relationship, both of you coming from two different families of origin, with different ideas of how things are and how things should be and who should do what and who should already know and do what, um, and so you come in and we began to realize we had some hidden expectations that would sometimes butt up against each other. And we also realized there were things about us that we hadn't really seen before we got married. Like Chris didn't know that I often struggled with depression and anxiety, and I didn't know that he could sometimes be abrasive and harsh and sometimes scornful. And and we both had to learn how to handle these conflicts. It was really um, something that took a very long time to learn. Good, fortunately, we were really good. We were always determined to solve our conflicts, not to just let them fester, but to work through the issue until we could heal the rift. So that we were always committed to that. But there's something that his mother told us early on that I thought I was doing a good job of paraphrasing in conflicts, and it wasn't.
You're getting ahead.
I'm getting ahead.
You're getting
so
ahead
anyway, so we'll talk later about this helpful thing for solving conflicts.
So our children, again, they turn out well, but that's because of us and in spite of us, and I think that's true. They're everybody makes mistakes, but also there's no magic formula for doing family right.
That's one of those things about having, there being different ways to approach devotion, different ways your family can look. What works for you as individuals and as a family.
Yeah, so there's no we kind of looked for a formula, but we read books, we learn stuff, but it has to be unique to the family, to the people. But also there's no guarantees, right? There are principles that we found to be very helpful. Let's see, truly working on and mastering relationship skills. Yeah, definitely working on those relationship skills is important. Um, but applying those principles and keep turning back towards each other.
Because a principle is different than a formula, right?
Yeah.
So you can apply the principles in many different ways, whereas a formula can be trying to force people into a script that turns out not to work for you.
So, and then ideals, they're good to aim for, but it's good to know and accept that you and your spouse will fall short, your children and so on. So, and learning to be okay with that, I think, is important. That's been helpful to us. So one of the ideals to aim for is to accept falling short of the ideal. You just get back up and try again. I mean, that's in any walk in life, both in trying to develop skills in anything, right? You work at it, you fail, you get back up, you work at it, overcoming an addiction, you fail, you get up, you try again, you keep praying, you keep going to confession. Your relationship, you might get in an argument, you might do something wrong, you get back up and you keep going. So
we'll start with talking about marriage, what's worked in our marriage. And for me, one of the biggest realizations I had pretty early on in our marriage is to really lean into the sacrament of marriage. If God's called you to marriage, that sacrament is your path to heaven. And, I'm sure you've heard this before, that a married couple, their job is to help one another get to heaven. And I heard a beautiful homily on marriage one time where the pastor spoke of the wedding feast at Cana, and about the wine. He said it's the grace of the sacrament, that overabundance of wine that Jesus provided for the marriage feast is a picture of the superabundant grace that he pours into our lives as a couple and into our family, and then overflows into our community through the sacrament of our marriage. So, I learned to, like if we had conflict or there's some rough spot, to not pull away from Chris, but to lean into our relationship, you know, turn towards more often, trust God's grace as we're trying to love each other and seek Him together, that He's going to pour abundant grace into our lives and take care of whatever the need is at the time.
And one of the things, as you were talking about that, we may talk about it, have it in our notes later, but in that process, we talk about when we have conflict, right? We turn back towards one another and we apologize. One of the practical realities is that when it comes to resolving conflict, there's something called a pursuer withdrawer kind of thing.
It's a dynamic that's very common in relationships.
Yeah. A lady named Sue Johnson wrote something called Hold Me Tight. She's a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever. But it's
she's done many years of research on attachment theory with adults. It's not just for children, it's for adults too. Yeah. And in marriage, attachment is the foundation of your marriage. And anyway, there's this really common dynamic that a lot of couples get into called the pursuer withdrawer dynamic. So
I was going to say, even though, you know, we talk about turning back towards each other, which is true. But Leslie is the pursuer in that. So if we get into conflict and I'm the withdrawer,
yeah.
So sometimes she has to work at giving space,
letting him calm down,
letting me calm down, and I sometimes have to. The withdrawer wants to just avoid conflict, right? And I have to calm but come back. So she usually pursues me in a good way in conflict, and she's the first usually to apologize or to try to reconcile.
Except for when I can't, and then I tell God I need him to, and I just keep praying about it, and then He does. He comes and initiates.
That's the grace. But
yeah.
But anyway, just a note, and we're gonna list some good some books and things to consider. Right. But a topic, just a sort of a parenthetical statement here. When we put this together, it was really hard to come up with like an outline, you know, what are the 3 main points or whatever, because they're just sort of thoughts, you know, things that we have done as we've looked backwards that have really worked. But one main point for us that we see was the difference, and we still work through this in our life, the difference between ideal, the perfect, and the lived reality. And I think for us in particular, right, you all are going to deal with whatever you're going to deal with. You know, some of you, most of you, maybe all of you don't have this issue. But for us, we did. We were very idealistic. And falling short of that ideal was hard. Both when we did it, like it was hard if I fell short of the ideal, but it was also hard, and probably harder, if I saw her fall short of the ideal or vice versa, right? Yeah. So you see the other falling short of the ideal. And so learning to work through that really in every area, seeing your kids fail or, you know, whatever. And so that.
Yeah, accepting the process, accepting and learning to trust God's grace and the power of the Holy Spirit to be at work inside each individual and inside the relationship. You know, that He has good plans for us. You know, plans to prosper us and not to harm us, plans to give us hope in a future. One time we were having a prolonged conflict and I was really distressed about it. And God reassured me with the scripture about how He numbers the stars. He calls each one by name, and not one of them is missing from its place. So, you know, so there's that, the ideals of what you want in a relationship, and then there's the reality of sometimes you struggle, sometimes there's conflict, sometimes you fall short, but you keep trusting in God and He'll get you there. So, let's see.
So one of the things, there is one formula.
Oh yeah, we talked about there not being any formula, but then we had the one formula.
But one formula.
It's the one my mother-in-law tried to teach us early on, and I kept trying to paraphrase. So, you know, if you're having a conflict and you say to the other, you don't have to do that, or whatever, it's really easy to come across as accusing and attributing motive, and that can just escalate the fight. So it wasn't until I learned to say the exact words that it really worked like a charm. And the formula, this is our one formula: when there's offense or hurt, um, say, when you did or said such and such, I felt such and such. And those exact words, because if you say, I feel that you did so and so, or you did so and so, that just, you're returning to the accusation. But all you can do is take responsibility for your own feelings. Mm-hmm. So the formula is: when you did or when you said, fill in the blank, I felt, fill in the blank. Things like sad or disappointed or frustrated.
When you were late coming home,
or when you
felt
spoke
sad, or
yeah.
I felt neglected, or so you don't say you neglected me, right? When you,
or I felt worried that I wasn't important to you.
Yeah. So
or when you spoke with that tone of voice, I felt unloved, or I felt afraid you don't love me, which is even better than unloved, because there's a little bit of accusation and unloved. So, all right, I'm starting to swim in notes here. I'm going to pull back and just say, in our marriage, we decided to prioritize each other, prioritize our relationship, mm-hmm. always resolve conflict, not betray each other's trust, invest in each other's emotional well-being, physical well-being.
Well, that's probably actually
go ahead.
On that one.
Sure.
So one of the things we discovered early on, especially as we had kids, was there was just more to do than there was time to do it. So with work, with just responsibilities to live, but then also things at church, things with friends, things with, and as you have kids, you got to tend to your kids, and they just don't usually all just line up and do exactly everything as you say, when you say it, etc. Sometimes it's easy. This is interesting because your family is where a good, healthy family is where you could let your hair down if you have any, right? But you could relax, you could be yourself, and sometimes that shows up where you might be gruff, you might be, you edit yourself more, sort of out in the world, away from family, but you edit yourself less at home. But if you are stressed and time is, you're being pulled in different directions, sometimes you can give into the temptation, right, to focus your efforts where you get these external rewards. Again, whether it's a church activity, sports with the kids, working to move up, and whatever. In fact, early on, I went back to school after we got married to get a graduate degree, and that took a lot of time. And so you really have to make time for your family. They have to be a priority.
Right, because if you've been called to the sacrament of marriage, then that is your priority. It is the vehicle through which God is going to sanctify you and your children while they're in your home, and then as they see your example as adults, but also you will be bringing the kingdom of God into the world through His life in you and through you as a couple. We early at the beginning of our marriage, we had this vision or this dream of being a duet. I'm like mixing my metaphors here, but a duet poured out before God and by God, and that's really what we aimed for. So I'm sure a lot of you, if not all, have heard of the theology of the body and of the total self-giving that God calls us to, whether we're married or single. But especially in marriage, it's a full giving of body, soul, and spirit. And it's a wonderful philosophical, theological foundation for our understanding of our relationship and marriage, but it doesn't give you the practical tools you need for everyday relationships. So, we've given you a smattering of practical things so far, and I think um, something that I think I'm gonna like focus it here on.
Mhm.
We have seen ourselves as lifelong learners, and so we've really pursued
Oh,
learning
yeah.
about marriage. We've pursued
To
learning
learn the
about
practical
family,
things to do
to
to be
learn
better.
those practical skills of
Because
relationships.
we realized we didn't know.
I mean,
we got into this marriage. It's like, well, what do we do now?
well, so we were best friends, but there were things that we just, expectations and the way things are that we
Yeah.
carried into our relationship with us, that some of them worked and bore good fruit and some of them didn't work.
Mhm.
So, I think the fact that we were always best friends and always committed to reconciling when we had a rift, keeping our relationship connected, checking in with each other and connecting every single day. How was your day? How are you feeling? What's on your mind? Um, lots of touch and affection. Not just
Yeah.
not just when you're feeling amorous, but lots of physical affection as well as verbal affirmation and service and presence. But in our searching and observing all around us and looking for resources, and by God's grace and through His parents who spent decades with Marriage Encounter and Engaged Encounter and Curcio and marriage enrichment programs, we've come by a really nice list of sources for reading or listening on podcasts or audiobooks that are excellent for marriage relationships and family relationships.
We can actually give that to
We could give you that
Nicole.
list if any of you
Yeah.
are interested in it.
So let's see.
So we try to apply all the psychology and neuroscience and theology and including sex therapy radio and books that we've listened to and read, and even church history and did I say theology? Yeah, theology.
So one of the things too in marriage, I'll just talk about this and then probably talk about kids.
Yeah.
But is talking about sex and coming together as a couple. I mean, when you get married, that's one of the big things that separates marriage from non-marriage, right? Is you have sex, and you're committed to one another. And we found this to be true, and we hear that it is true. We see others, that talk about this stuff. But generally, early on, things are pretty easy, just right. But what happens is the newness of the relationship kind of wanes.
And bodies age.
And bodies age, yeah. But you have to talk. And for us, now we're an older generation, right? So you guys may not have this problem, but
yeah, we got there like 32 years ago.
Yeah. But a lot of folks who have a hard time, they'll actually find it easier to have sex than to talk about sex, right? You have to, and if you grew up, whether you grew up in a religious environment or not, maybe you might have grown up where sex is dirty, you might, whatever. But learning how to talk with your spouse, and you have to sometimes push past some things, some discomforts, and just as you open up about what you want, what your spouse wants. So it's about sex. We had to learn to talk about emotion. I had no vocabulary for emotion.
Really mad, sad, glad, I think. That's what he said his vocabulary was. Marriage Encounter really helped us grow in learning how to be aware of our own emotions. They have nice lists, a couple of pages full of emotion descriptors. And we learned how to share our emotions with each other and really listen compassionately to each other.
Yeah.
And that helped us grow in intimacy in a time in our marriage when we were kind of in the doldrums of having teenagers and being busy and realized we needed to grow in intimacy. So yes, you need to talk about emotions and learn how, if you don't have a vocabulary for emotions, or if they were never talked about in your own home, you know, he brought up emotions after bringing up sex, because I think you're thinking the same thing that I'm thinking, that um, intimacy is the whole point of marriage. Emotional intimacy, intellectual, psychological, and physical intimacy. And you can't have that if you won't talk to each other about your inner world, you know, your feelings and your needs and your fears and your hopes. So, not that everybody has to be an expert at it right off the bat, but to be willing to do it, to be willing to learn and take the risk of opening up to each other emotionally, because there's nothing like being fully seen and fully known and received and loved and accepted, um, when your inner person is no longer hiding.
And that is part of the path that leads us to God, to experience.
It is. It's like,
so
he's given us a concrete environment in which to experience his exquisite love. You know, I realized that in loving Chris, I'm loving Jesus. And in receiving Chris's love, I'm receiving Jesus's love. And that's so moving, you know, to realize, is this how merciful Jesus is to me? Or is this how tender Jesus is to me, or how patient he is with me? So, I mean, yes, marriage has its conflicts, but it also has its deep, deep comforts of that knowing and being known, being comforted, being accepted, you know.
Oh, if I can make a comment too. So porn was not really, we've been fortunate. That's not been an
We
issue.
didn't have the internet. We really dodged a bullet, you know,
but
in our time.
But whether it is or is not an issue for any of you, movies, I think, are actually very damaging in this regard. I'm not like, don't watch movies, not at all.
Right, we both enjoy movies.
But stories, the point is that one of the negatives with porn and with movies, right, is that they create a picture, an expectation of what a relationship should look like. Right. And you may not realize it, but you kind of begin to pick that up, and you may have expectations of the other based on that. So that's something that was important to, you know, ideas of what's romantic, what's not romantic, how the other, it's really how the other will respond, and or how you should act. And what it really is when you get married, you marry a person, you don't marry an idea, right? And you have to get to know that person, and that person is not going to be like the people in the movies.
Right. I think.
Well, I do want to say, I was going to list these. So we had to learn about boundaries with our families of origin. Yep, I'm just going to whip these out. That's very important. So,
yes, because different families have different cultures and different expectations, and you have to figure out how you're going to build your own family culture and protect your own family time while being connected to your family of origin. But that's something you two have to negotiate prayerfully with each other and with your family.
Focus on the good. So, you know, and this is so true. This is with just any relationship, right? With your parents, with your friends, with your spouse, with your children. When you focus on the negative will grow. It just gets bigger.
It's basically whatever's right here looks like the world.
Yeah. When you focus on the good, it helps, and it makes you more able to overlook the negatives. Everybody's got negatives, right?
Yes.
And so, so
there have been times where we both sustained our affection for each other through periods of frustration by purposefully recalling the good and not focusing on the negative. Because if the negative is in your face, it looks like the whole world is negative. But if you turn and look at the good, you know, the negative, of course, recedes.
So, and this is the last thing, and we're going to talk about raising children. But there's a lot of people that have ideas and ideals about family and about, patriarchy or what should and shouldn't be, whatever it is, right? But a good rule of thumb, this has been very helpful to us, is whenever you're sort of discerning, somebody says something about marriage, you're thinking about something related to marriage, is think about, since marriage is an icon of the Trinity, apply that concept or rule to the Trinity. And if it doesn't work there, it probably doesn't work for marriage. It may not be a good one. You know what I mean? So that's just something to, and no. So, yeah. So now for raising children. No, you can't see anything. Oh.
Okay, so this is something I felt really strongly about saying. Raising kids requires radical love, unconditional love, radical acceptance, those unique little individuals with their very own lives and their very own stories, not my story, it's not his story, it's their story, and radical trust in a God who is really present and really active even when we can't see what's going on. It also requires respect. So, we went into being parents with these goals, but then you come face to face with how you're not living up to those goals.
I still remember when she got pregnant, right? I mean, we did the worst, sort of the start, but she carries the baby, right?
We didn't get pregnant.
We didn't get pregnant. Yeah. She got pregnant, but we anyway. So I remember, but we didn't know she was pregnant. She was sick, and we went to the doctor, and then it's not like we had it all figured out, right? And then we found out, because you were throwing up.
I thought, did I have this weird flu or something?
Yeah, and then I can still remember when the doctor said that you're pregnant, the world just went sideways for a minute and came back. That's like, I still remember that. Anyway, just
So a few things about raising kids. Really try to see them. See who is this child. We talked earlier about there not being a formula. Same here. There's it's a temptation to try to force your spouse, yourself, your children into your intimate life as a married couple into a script. A script of what a holy family should look like, a script of what a romantic relationship or an intimate relationship should look like, someone else's script, but or how your child should behave or what your child's preferences should be. They should be like mine. No, I'm kidding. You know what I mean? It's easy to want our children to be carbon copies of ourselves or to have the same calling or interest as ourselves. So it just was really, really important to us to try to see each child for who he or she was. And believe me, we missed it sometimes. We really missed it sometimes. We thought we understood a child that we didn't. And so that's where prayer comes in. God makes up for our lacks. Pray over everything. Pray over every hope, every goal, every endeavor, every failure, every fear. Pray over everything, and God gives you wisdom. He gives you courage. He gives you peace. He makes up for your failures and your lacks in your children's lives. He abundantly makes up for them, and he makes up for your lacks in your own life. He can take you, raise you up out of some pit you're in to 5 steps ahead of where you were when you fell in the pit. So, never underestimate what's possible with God through prayer.
So just a note, and I've known this to be true in our lives and in other people that I've talked to. It's even if you don't currently like kids, that's okay when you have your own. If you have
we were not necessarily kid people before we had our own.
But there's something about your own kids that it's different, right? Something sort of comes out of you, love for them, but also what occurs is sometimes when we really love something, right, we can get very possessive of that thing. We want to protect it. I wasn't a real Star Wars fan. I remember when the original Star Wars came out, right? Saw it at the movie theater, but The one that I really, people are probably shutting me off right now because I'm not a Star Wars fan, but the one that I thought was interesting was the one where Darth Vader became bad. Anakin became bad
That
or
was
whatever.
the later ones.
The later ones.
The mid
But
ones.
he was trying to control the beloved princess, whatever her name was, but he wanted to control and make sure nothing would happen to her. You can't do that, right? Every life is their own life. You can do what you can, but it really, you have to choose to trust God. And I love in the Easter service, the vigil, there's a saying, oh, happy sin. I mean, what an odd statement, right? But that's part of the liturgy because it's that sin, where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. It's not that sin is okay. It's that we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be worried about it. I mean, I did not grow up a good Catholic. I didn't grow up a good person, right? And I came to the Lord later. God works in lives, and your children are in their own walk, and you have to allow that. You work with them, you walk alongside them, but if you try to control them, it will not generally work out well. There will be damage somewhere or other down the pike.
I think the framework for this is that we as parents are kind of a proxy for God in our kids' lives. We're the ones who provide for them, smile on them. There's a reason the Aaronic blessing is the Lord bless you and keep you, the Lord make his face shine upon you, the Lord turn his face toward you and be gracious to you and give you peace. I'm probably mixing verses there, but it all has the elements of turn his countenance towards you, look upon you, let his face shine upon you, smile upon you, be gracious to you, give you peace. In a very real way, our countenance, our behavior, our treatment of our children is implicitly training them what God is like. And our goal was to be unconditionally loving to our children like God is to us, patient with our children like God is to us, respectful to our children like God is to us. See each child and not try to force them to be someone they're not, like God does with us. Of course we failed. Of course we fell short so many times in many different ways. But we just kept getting up and trying again. And then we'd learn some more, see something we were blind to in ourselves, and keep learning and keep learning. And we're still learning.
So there were two specific things that we did. One, I know for myself, I remember I was just, the kids would want to do something, they want to play, they want attention of some sort. And it got to a point where I was just saying, no, I was too tired. I didn't want to, right? And then I realized, that's not fair. And so I had to sort of train myself. So there's a self-reflection as you're it's in marriage, it's also in raising kids. You have it, I'm sure, just in your life, just with friends and so on. But so there was I guess a natural selfishness that I had to get past. And for you, remember I bring this up a lot, mostly because it's a reminder that you can overcome a reactionary thing.
Yeah. There came a time, I don't know if I was just super stressed and my body was a bit depleted or something of B vitamins. I don't know. The B vitamins helped. But I started yelling at the kids, and it took about three. Yeah. Well, I was just.
That was a reaction. It was just a reaction.
Reactionary, yeah. And it took about 3 years of concerted effort and prayer to stop yelling at them.
So she recognized that it was going on.
Yeah.
She would no.
Okay. So when I was, first of all, I would catch myself when I was done yelling and have to apologize because. Respect doesn't work only one direction. If I want them to apologize to me if they've hurt my feelings or done wrong, I need to apologize to them when I've hurt their feelings and done wrong. So I would, say, I'm so sorry. I wish I'd handled it this way. And then I got to where I'd catch myself in the middle and change my tone by the end of the sentence. And then it got to where I could catch myself in the beginning and just say something calmer. But, there may be times when there are mismatches in what your goal is about how you want to treat your child and how you actually are treating your child. And just keep trying, keep praying. So, we were talking about not controlling our children. It can be a real temptation to try to get highest behavior out of them or appropriate behavior out of them through shame or withdrawal of attention or withdrawal of affection or some other force rushing upon them like we're going to snatch them up or something. And we really had to come to terms with what things are we doing that are being a bully, that are manipulating. Like shame and shoulds can be a very huge burden of manipulation. And so we had to weed those things out of our behavior to the children. And of course, there's different levels of control you have over them from the time they're little. Until they grow up. You're just gradually releasing more and more control as you're hopefully teaching them to control themselves. But we really had to watch out for shaming and shoulding, because nagging and fear and anxiety repel people from God and from you. Joy, love, peace, acceptance, respect, those and competence, those things attract them, your children, to yourself, and they attract your children to God, because as I said a little earlier, we reflect God to our children, whether in a poor way, in a fractured way, or in a more full and true way of that radiating delight, radiating joy, radiating acceptance. And so we found that in any place where we over controlled our children in a way that was inappropriate for their age and stage, there was pushback or rebellion or hiding, hiding to try to please us. And so we've become aware of those areas and humbly and truly apologized. Our children have been able to trust us more in those areas. But we weren't after perfect behavior. We were after them catching a love and trust in God from seeing it in us and from us treating them as God would have us treat them, as we would like to be treated. So, that was our goal for our children to allow the Holy Spirit to draw each child and not try to force them to God, not try to make a fight over the unessential, like a daughter wanting to wear jeans to mass instead of a dress or a skirt. Am I gonna make mass a battle area, or am I just happy they're at mass?
Yeah.
So I see the time. We should probably wrap it up.
Yeah. So I was going to do some things just in summary, if we could summarize. There's so much. And
sorry.
we're still learning. But these were just some things that have helped us. So we sort of put this together. It's actually more Leslie. But so I'm there for you, for your spouse, for your children, right? So time. You got to spend time.
And attention. Like, it's okay to watch shows. It's okay to be on your phone. It's okay to do work or hobbies. But when you're with your child, you're with your child.
Yeah.
Or your spouse.
Or you may have to cut some of those out to
yes, if they interfere. Yeah.
So I'm there for you. I see you. So I recognize you as an individual, not, you're just a spouse, the generic spouse. You are a person, a particular person. So I see you. I forgive you. We keep turning back towards each other. I prioritize you. So I give the best of your time to your spouse and children. Don't give them the leftovers, right? Pay attention to them. And then remember, use the Trinity as a model, both for your spousal relationship and for your family. And then, well, it's not finally pray. Pray a lot. That's just sort of, you kind of breathe it.
And with that, shall we pray?
With that, we shall pray. You shall go for it.
Okay. Father, thank you for your goodness to us. Thank you that you see each one of us. You respect us. Thank you that you wait for us. You receive us. You delight in us. You forgive us our sins. Help us to be that mercy and love, that generous love to each other and to our children, and for these students, for their spouses to be and their children to be. And I thank you for this time together. And I pray that if there's anything that you want to be remembered, it would be remembered, and everything else would just flow away.
Amen.
So, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Good. There you are. So I think it's open for questions.
All righty. Can you hear me all right over there?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. and Mrs. Basham. That was amazing relationship advice. Yeah, I need to go back and take some notes with that. Also, a lot of the things that you're talking about, I don't remember if you mentioned this, but it reminds me of the sound relationship house theory through the Gottman
Gottman,
Institute.
yeah.
Yes, that's one of the sources we were going to
Totally.
apply
Yep,
on
yep,
you guys.
Yeah, so maybe we could like somehow link that in the description.
Yes, the Gottmans,
The
the Popchaks, and Sue Johnson are our biggest relationship heroes.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, such great resources.
Yes. Yes.
So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. We have some great questions coming in. So the first one, do you ever fall into resentment in family relationships, and how do you get through that resentment?
We never.
Are we
ever,
human?
Ever.
You're just perfect. We get it.
So, my gosh, do we ever? I mean, the point is that it's not to not fall into it. The point is, what do you do with it when it happens? Because, as I think it was John Chrysostom said, we have these earthen vessels, and we're gonna clink into each other and crack each other from time to time. And we can't, even if we try to be the perfect spouse or the perfect parent, we can't help but sometimes be insensitive or trip a raw spot or a trigger, and or have misunderstandings, and we misattribute motives. And so that's where the skills come in. Relationships, theology of the body is your foundation, but you have to build the house on sound relationship skills. As Nicole mentioned, the Gottman Sound Relationship House. Sue Johnson has an excellent book called Hold Me Tight. She also has one that's written especially for people of faith. So if you look for the Christian Sue Johnson Hold Me Tight, you'll find the title of it. And then Greg and is it Lori Popchak? Lisa, Greg,
Yeah.
Lisa Popchak. They have a book called Holy Sex on Marriage, and they have a book called, this is the best marriage book we've read so far, besides the Gottman stuff and Sue Johnson, is the 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. So, but the Gottmans can't be beat, and Sue Johnson can't be beat for conflict resolution.
But so I would say that the first thing is to recognize that you have resentment, and then take that to God, confession, and start focusing on the good. That will help.
Yeah.
One of the Aquinas' prayer after communion, he talks about a shield of goodwill. And by focusing on the good, it helps you build some goodwill. If you can do anything good, joke,
a little touch,
anything,
any act of kindness, really learn each other's love language, and any act of kindness, especially employing that love language, really helps.
Yeah.
But I had a problem with bitterness growing up, and I needed to go to confession over and over to get rid of that, but also counseling. There are times when, if it's something that you can't get over in a day or two or a week or two, think about a good therapist. It can really help untangle some things in the,
or a good friend that you trust in.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, and the concept of seeking counseling and therapy has actually come up a lot this semester, and I think it's easy to see it as this scary thing, but it's not. It's so helpful and so important.
Well, even therapists go to therapists.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's because here it is. Our natural tendency is to apply our logical mind to our problems, which is great when it's a problem of finding food, shelter, protection, help when you're wounded. But our logical mind does a horrible job of figuring out how to resolve our emotional conflicts. So Stephen, what's his name? Stephen Hayes is also an excellent resource for personal growth. So,
Okay.
and therapists are a great thing.
Yes.
Wow, we got to generate a whole list after this.
Yeah.
We have a lot more. Yeah, a lot of great questions come in, so I want to try and get to as many as we can. Next one, how can I, a young adult, love my parents, both long distance or from home?
That's a very good question. So I had a real rupture with my parents when I was young, and after I came to the Lord, I knew I needed to work through that. One of the, so I don't know if you already have a good relationship or not. If you do, and if your question is how can I act in ways that make them feel loved, you might just ask them. You might just say, "What works for you? What do you like?"
Yeah. What's your love language?
If you're like, I hate my parents and I really need to love them, all right, then it's more, one of the things I did is I wrote a letter to them. I didn't give it to them, but it was helpful to me. And I'm not a writer; I hate writing, but I kind of got that out. And I remember one day I told them that I loved them, even though I didn't. And there was no feeling of it. I just sort of chose that. But as I was just, fake it till you make it kind of deal. As I did that and was acting better towards them, the relationship improved.
Yes.
Wow.
And I would say if it's a relationship fraught with conflict, to go to confession or therapy, and just every day say a prayer for them for their blessing.
Oh,
and if you can bring yourself to call once a week or every other week or something that works for you.
If your parents, like Leslie's parents, are not Catholic, her dad really did not. She sort of went bad when she became Catholic.
No, I just
anyway.
Anyway,
but sometimes she has to dance a little bit, so she can't be as open with them. But she still goes and invests in them, and you may not be able to invest as much as you want because it hurts. It's just hard, and that's a dissonance you just kind of have to live with. But the good that you're doing is good that you're doing.
Right, and personal boundaries are important. So please don't think we're saying you have to just not have any personal boundaries.
Yeah.
In order to have any healthy relationships, you need to have healthy personal boundaries.
Yes. And I love how you both keep bringing up the love languages.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so easy to, all right, well, this is how I receive love, so I'm just going to give love in the same way and think everyone's going to receive it the same way.
Right.
But it just shows so much and you all were talking about you're married to a person, not an idea, and you have to get to know that person. And so through getting to know that person, you discover, all right, this is what communicates love to them in the way that they receive it, and speaking that language. Like, I just love how you keep bringing that up, because that's not just a romantic relationship thing, that's in every relationship thing. So and it's cool that you even said, like, well, ask them how they want to be loved.
We had to ask each other.
Yeah. Next question. What advice would you give for a child to go about talking about wounds that they received from their parents?
Sure. Go for it.
Okay. So, I guess it depends on the personality of you and of your parents. Are you saying from the perspective of a child going to a parent or a parent asking of the child?
It seems like the child would be the one speaking this from the question.
Okay. Well, we actually, with our own kids, tried to learn how to let them be angry at us, because God lets us be angry at Him. you know. So they just told us however they wanted to, and we just kind of took it. um, but for me, say to go to my own parents, I could say I realized that you didn't mean to come across this way, but when you did this, I felt this way. It's that same formula that I kept messing up for like 23 years until I finally figured out I have to use exactly those words. When you did this, I felt this way, and it's all like not words like I'm just going to have to recommend a book for this. It's called Nonviolent.
Yes.
There's 2 books on nonviolent communication, and it's really good about how to bring up conflicts. But so are the Gottmans, and so is Sue Johnson. So
I do have a
for
recommendation.
time's sake, I'll leave it there.
Depending on your parents, you know who they are, and so on. And the problem with child-parent relationships is it's kind of fraught. You got a whole history together, right? And you really
and some respect your boundaries, and some don't.
But you're both changing. You're both growing. I would recommend sort of writing down the wound, the hurt, some things that work, writing a letter, because that way when you get into the emotion, it's hard, but write a letter, and don't be careful, and have a friend read it, that there's not accusation there.
Just how I feel.
This is something you discovered in you. And
not very important.
The parent may say, well,
you're
messed up. The parent may say, I am so sorry, right? It's, and I don't know your parent, but
it depends on the capacity of the parent for self-reflection and to humbly ask forgiveness or to make it about themselves, and which they might not realize they're doing.
Most parents, I think, though, would feel and would want to know. So I think writing a letter is sort of allows some.
But then having, like you said, a friend look over for. You need to change your tone.
That's what it's called.
You know?
Yeah, especially with written things. Yeah. Thank you for that beautiful advice.
To it if you're talking, to keep you on track. But also a priest about it. A priest might give wisdom on how and if to address those, whatever your concern is.
Yes. Yeah. Again, thank you for that beautiful advice. I know that's a really deep topic, but something that a lot of us do struggle with. So thank you. All right, we're gonna try to hit 2 more questions. This is so beautiful. Can you explain more about the Trinity and about how that relates to family relationships?
I was going to go there, but you can. Oh, I was going to say, so one of the things that we looked at, when you look in the relationship of marriage, and we can go, there's a whole thing about, patriarchy, right? The guy needs to be,
must be the head
of the household,
must be the spiritual leader, and the woman must submit.
I've got some, if anybody wants, there's actually some good solid theology as to how to interpret that without like getting all crazy. But if you look at the Trinity, God's not like telling Jesus to do all this stuff, and they're not. It's not a hierarchy like that, right? There's it's a mutual love, and so when we would look at people's interpretation of how
Ephesians and Titus and even Genesis,
it doesn't work in the Trinity. It really doesn't. And if you think of, the Trinity doesn't have sex, right? But sex is something that's physical, but it's something that's more than physical. There's a level of intimacy, and that intimacy sex is itself an icon of that intimacy of the Trinity. So if there's a demandingness and if
there's a hierarchy of power, if there's the patriarchal authority and the wifely submission, how does that square with the theology of the body? Or mutual self-giving of communion,
or parents and children. If parents are like, do this, do that,
if they're lording it over,
that's not a very Trinitarian kind of concept.
I mean, there's a telling your kids what to do or making requests, but there's an difference in attitude.
Yeah.
You know.
So anyway,
whether it's respectful or not.
Hopefully that answers it.
So
Yes.
So we look at the.
What do we do next one? Because we're running.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, so much could be said on that, and I think that's really great.
Talk.
I know. I mean, we should have a talk on that. And I think that'll open a lot of really fruitful conversation too, of like, even in our prayer life, the Lord isn't forceful. He's always inviting and encouraging. Yeah.
And with Mary, he waited for her fiat. So
yes.
So we believe in egalitarian marriage, not patriarchal marriage, because of Genesis before the fall, in the beginning, to which Jesus refers.
Great resource, Robert Miller. He teaches at Catholic University. Yeah. He's one of the people that helped devise, or is writing the the Catholic edition of the Revised Standard Version, the new Revised Standard Version. I mean, this guy, great courses.
He's an expert in
the Old Testament,
ancient language and
he's
culture.
Going to give you a background that'll just like, wow.
Yeah.
Because JP2 talks about in the beginning. Well, he's going to, anyway, it's great. So
fabulous.
That's
one more question.
Scattershot for that question.
I know that could be its own thing. But that's great. And for those who are interested, definitely check out those resources, because I think this is very important to have a understanding of, instead of just hearing something and then maybe there's misconceptions.
Right.
Yeah, always good to go deeper into.
Yeah, we intuited egalitarian marriage is where we needed to go. The Pop Shacks really teach egalitarian marriage is where you thrive. And then to hear Professor Robert Miller from Catholic University on this great courses about the Old Testament,
and particularly on Genesis,
really solidified it for us. But
I'm going to check that out. That's awesome. Thank you. All right. And last one, I'm excited to hear this. It's kind of two parts. The first part, how long did you date before getting married? And then what advice would you have given yourselves from where you are now, looking back then when you were dating? What advice would you have given yourselves? So how long did you date, and then the advice that you would give yourselves?
We met February 21st, hung out with the group, and went out as friends. We talked about this until April 11th, when we started officially dating exclusively, just the two of us, boyfriend, girlfriend, started holding hands. So what is that? February 21st to April 11th to start dating. April 11th to May 7th. Get it? That's less than 1 month.
Doesn't take long, folks.
We got engaged May 7th.
I was 25.
He was 25.
Wait.
So we got
April to May.
We dated 3.5 weeks before we got engaged.
And look at this, people. Yes.
Okay, but see, he was 25, about to turn 26, and I was 22, about to turn 23. So we were a little bit more mature, a little bit, felt ready, ready for marriage. But I mean, it's like, guys, I would be driving from Leesburg to George Mason along Route 15 south, and then I'd head east on Route 15, going along Catoctin Mountain, like under the shadow of Catoctin Mountain with the red buzz. This direction. Red buds twinkling out from under the edge of the woods, daffodils larger than life. It's like time slowed down. My heart dilated, time dilated. It was a matter of weeks, but it seemed like a long time.
We got from our parents, both sets of parents, there was there weren't any like negatives, like this is a bad idea.
Right. We would hang out at each other's houses. So our parents were checking us out. His dad came to me at one point and said, I always knew Chris would need a strong woman to handle him, but I think you're up to the task.
But so then we got engaged. In fact, we were behind sub 1, and we were getting our
missed my chance
scores. But
I missed my chance for a really romantic engagement, sitting next to the river at Great Falls.
Because she wanted me to wait.
Because I was scared, and I said, "Can we wait?" And then the next weekend, he asked me in the parking lot behind Sub 1.
Yeah. So, but then, and she said yes. And then we got married that September. So from meeting to marriage was
7 months and 2 days.
So, but it took. And then what advice? I think, probably keep getting back up. Keep at it.
Remember radical love, radical acceptance, radical trust.
Radical.
But it's trust in God. It's trust that God is at work and God is able. Pray about everything.
You gotta keep getting
and seek counsel and search out good resources, which we have a whole list if anybody's interested.
Yes.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, so we can send you that list. Yeah.
Yes, that'd be great. Yes.
And it's not
Wow.
all Christian. Some of it's Christian, some of it's not. So you have to read it with discernment.
The non-Christian ones apply their advice, like when they give an example, sometimes they'll give it, using a same-sex couple as an example. But their principles on how to make a relationship thrive, how to treat each other, how to handle
the Gottmans do that, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
All of that applies, whether you're Christian or not Christian, so.
Yeah. And I love closing with this because it just shows, I mean, you didn't date for very long, and how we think about it now of like, oh, you need to do this for at least a year. I mean, it depends on where you are in life, but it's just like you were mature, you had an adequate understanding of things, your dating was very intentional, and you have a beautiful marriage now, however many years later. I mean, it's just a testament to your heart through it all, not necessarily like the amount of days, even though that does matter.
We connected intellectually, spiritually, emotionally,
grammatically,
theologically. We shared interests, we shared goals, and we shared family expectations.
Our values matched.
So we lined up a lot, and we talk, and asked why, behind why you're saying, and we really have always just been about trying to know each other. So.
Wow. Well, this was incredible. I've been looking forward to this ever since that one day after Mass. So from all of us, thank you so much for all the months of planning that you put into this. I mean, it's just so appreciated, and I'm excited to go watch it again and see those resources. I mean, this is something that we should be learning about. So
if anybody has some questions that weren't answered, you could just send them to us, and we'll
type up our answers as best we can.
Wow.
Just so nobody feels left out.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
Seeing the faces on the screen that we got to see earlier.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. I'll send you those after this, and then we'll make them available to everyone.
Okay.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we have some closing announcements. So, okay, great. Yep. Do you want to come up?
All right. Oh, what a great TNS. All right. The only announcement that we have is next TNS will be April 15th, so we're back in our regular schedule. It'll be with Dr. Jonathan Reyes about growing in discipleship in the midst of transition. Other than that, happy Easter. Have a good night. And I'll see you later. Bye.